Hi guys, welcome back. Today I want to do a little wrap-up video for my participation in the Classics Community Challenge in the year of 2020. I'll go over how well I did in the challenge, some of the top and the flops that I discovered along the way, and just talk a bit in general about my experience participating in this challenge for the first time this year. This challenge was created by Lucy the Reader, and I'll put all the informations on the challenge in the description box below if you want to check it out, and I have no doubt that the challenge will come back in 2021 if you want to jump in as well. So the point of this challenge was pretty much just to read some classics, and you can already participate if you just read one classic in the whole year. So as I am quite into classics, I thought I would set myself a goal of 20 classics, which is just below 2 classics a month, which I thought would be something I could manage. I did not quite reach this goal as I read 16 classics in total in the year of 2020, but what I really enjoyed and was really happy about going through the books that I read, and what I noticed is that I was able to combine both this classics challenge and my own challenge that I set myself to read more books in French and German. So I did indeed read quite a lot of classics both in French and in German this year, which I'm really happy about. Out of the 16 classics I read this year, I read 7 French classics and 3 German classics. So I'm super happy about that. Now on to some of my favorite classics I read this year and some of the ones I enjoyed the least. I will just do a top 3 and a flop 3, as well as 3 honorable mentions. We're going to start with the flops, and the first one would probably be a collection of poems by Guillaume Apollinaire called Calligrammes, which was written in the aftermath of the First World War and showing how the poet is trying to come to terms with the stuff he's seen and he has lived through. I love Guillaume Apollinaire's poetry collection called Alcool and love the themes that he develops there. And I was hoping to like that collection as well, but ended up not connecting that much with the poems, not as much as I hoped, which was really a shame. Next up is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, which mostly surprised me because I love H.G. Wells's The War of the Worlds, but this novel just really didn't do it for me. There were too many things in terms of depiction of natives of Central America, as well as themes of like bodily horror that felt very outdated for me at least, that this kind of spoiled the whole reading experience, which I was really sad about because I was really looking for this discussion of you know, what makes a man and what makes him a beast, and this was really the stuff that I was looking for in this book, and it was just overtoned by this stuff that was just icky for me. And last are unfortunately some of Rainer Maria Rilke's poems. I've been meaning to read some of Rilke's stuff for a while, and I ended up picking up 2 books by him this year, and both of them unfortunately didn't work for me, and most specifically his poems, which is also a real shame. I couldn't connect with his writing, and maybe it's also just a language thing. I tend to connect with poetry written in French way more. So yeah, that was a shame as well. Now on to the 3 honorable mentions. First off, I have Les Jeux Sont Faits by Jean-Paul Sartre, a book that really surprised me and hit me really hard. That's all about our destinies and the lack of influence we have as human beings to really change something about it, or maybe we do in some ways. And it really made me think a lot more than I was thinking I would, which was wonderful. Next up is definitely Germinal by Émile Zola. Mostly, I think, also because I had this wonderful experience of hosting a read-along with a bunch of other people, and we read it together, discussed it, and it's just a really impactful novel in general about the condition of mine workers in the 19th century in France and how they try to fight for a life that they deserve, but are not getting, and just a really, really wonderful read. And lastly, I also really, really enjoyed Die Physiker by Dürrenmatt, who is a Swiss author, and it also kind of took me by surprise, talking about the ethics of science and what it means to know something that might potentially be harmful to the world and how you deal with that. I just absolutely loved it. So on to my top 3, which obviously were books that I absolutely loved. On place number 3, I have a mystery from the 19th century called Le Mystère de la Chambre Jaune by Gaston Leroux, The Mystery of the Yellow Room. It's a closed circle mystery that I really, really enjoyed, that took me by surprise. I did not see the twist coming and the resolution not either. And it felt very engaging and modern for the time it was written in. And I would recommend it to any mystery lover out there. I think it's one that is very, very underrepresented on BookTube, but also not talked about as much in general, which I think is a really shame. On place 2, I have The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Brontë. This is one I have been meaning to read for such a long time, and at last I've started reading it this year, and I'm so glad I got to it. I could really connect with our main character, who has to go through some hardships, and the way she deals with it in a very modern way for the time Anne Brontë was writing in was really striking to me, and is the thing that leaves a lasting impression on me. And it's definitely one that I want to reread further down the road. And finally, it should probably come to no surprise, my favorite book of the year and all-time favorite is L'Assommoir by Émile Zola. I read this book beginning of the year, kind of knowing that I would love it probably, and it doesn't happen to me very often that I predict that really well, but I absolutely loved this book. We follow a young woman called Gervaise who has recently moved to Paris with her abusive husband and is trying to make a life for herself and for her family, and kind of following her on all her trials and tribulations, her victories and her defeats, in just wanting to have a life that suits her and a life that is honest, and how French society in the 19th century doesn't necessarily offer that in the way it's built for people in the working class. It was just so heartbreaking. I don't often cry when I read, but I definitely did cry on a few occasions reading this book, and it's become such a dear book to me. So just a few conclusions on what I have learned doing this challenge. I think, firstly, I was pretty sure I would reach those 20 books, and so it ended up surprising me that I didn't reach that goal. It's not such a big deal for me, honestly, because what I did see is that it motivated me to pick up some thicker books, and quite a lot of the books I ended up reading were quite big, which is something that I'm just intrinsically a bit scared of. I tend to be really intimidated by books that are a bit more hefty. Secondly, I absolutely loved hosting and participating in the Germinal read-along that I did, and it was such a wonderful experience. I loved exchanging with other book lovers, and I can tell you as much that this will probably be repeated. I am not done with my journey going through Émile Zola's works, and I don't plan on stopping soon, and I have quite strong plans that I would really like you guys, if you're interested, to come along on the ride. So the plan would probably be to do at least one Émile Zola read-along a year, maybe even 2, we'll see, but more on that soon, I guess. Another thing that I learned is that I definitely want to continue combining the Classics Community Challenge with my ongoing challenge of continuing to read books both in French and in German. I think it worked really well this year, and I'll probably continue on next year. Other than that, I think participating in the 2021 challenge, I'll probably stick to the 20 classics a year, and hopefully next year I will actually crack that number. But yeah, I just loved participating in this challenge, and maybe I can convince you to do so as well next year. Let me know if you have participated and what were some of your highlights. I would really like to know. And yeah, hopefully I could also give you some recommendations for books you might want to try out participating in the challenge. Yeah, let me know what your plans are, and yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!